All right, so let's look at this final exercise in the dictionaries and hash maps section. So basically what we have is we're given a collection of queries, and each query gives you an instruction. So the one, two, and so basically a query is two numbers. You've got the first number and the second number. The first one just tells you what type of instruction it is, 1, 2, or 3. And then the second number gives you the actual value that you're dealing with. So if the first number is 1, then the second number is a number that they want to be included into this database. If the first number is 2, then that means that this is a number that we want to be deleted from the database, if present, of course. And then if the first number is 3, then what it wants to do is check if any integer in the database is present whose frequency is exactly this number. And if the answer is yes, print 1, and if it's not, print 0. So basically this walks you through an example. So here, so this 1, so it tells you, so let's insert a number. The number we're inserting is 1. Here we're deleting a number, and the number we're deleting is 2. Well, 2 isn't in there, so it doesn't do anything. Then this tells you to check if there is any value in the array which occurs with frequency 2. And the only thing in the array is the number 1, which occurs with frequency 1. So the answer is no, so it prints 0. Now we want to add in, this tells to add a second 1. This says to add a third 1. And this says to remove one of the 1s. So we go back down to just the array having 2 1s. And now what we do is we check if any value in the array has frequency 2. And here, well, the only value in the array is 1, but it does occur with frequency 2. And so there is, in fact, an integer whose presence is exactly 2. And so we output a 1. Okay, so that's sort of how this works. And of course, we want to do this as efficiently as possible. And so, of course, let's see here. So with this being a dictionary section, we want to use dictionaries. And we want to think, when figuring out what dictionaries we want to define, we got to think, like, what things do we want information about? So, of course, we want to know information about the different integers in the database. Because we want to add and remove values from the database. So of course, let's see here. So we're going to store the frequency of each value in the database, and we're going to call this DB for database. Dictionary, we're going to start it, and it's going to be empty. So we're going to use this database to look up. So basically what we're going to do is for each value, this dictionary is going to tell us how many times that value appears in the database. So like for here, for example, the database would look like 1, 3, because the value 1 occurs with frequency 3. However, that's not the only thing that we want to find information about. When we do instruction 3, what it asks is it wants to know how many values in the database occur at a given frequency. So the frequency is the thing that we actually want to get more information about. And so while you could go through this dictionary that we've defined here and just search, okay, let's search through all entries in this dictionary and see how many, and go through them one by one and see, okay, does this entry in the dictionary have the frequency we're looking for? And if no, we skip past it. That tends to be slow. You don't want the thing, so it's sort of like in the dictionary, you've got the key and the value. So in that dictionary, here I said, if the database consists of the number 1 occurring 3 times, then the key is 1 and the value is 3. So you don't really want to be looking up that value, that second information in a dictionary. The thing you want to be looking up is the key, is that first entry. So what we want to do is we actually want to create a second dictionary whose key is a given frequency. So what we're going to do is we're going to store the number of values which occur at a given frequency. So, and we're going to call this frequency dictionary. I hope the names aren't too confusing because, of course, here we're storing the frequency of each value. But the thing here, so the value, this is the key for the dictionary. And here, here we're going to store the number of values which occur at a given frequency. So the frequency here is the key in this dictionary. So if we look at that example 111, again, so the database dictionary is going to have 1 is going to be the key and the corresponding value is 3. However, for the frequency dictionary, the key is going to be 3 and the corresponding value is 1 because there is precisely 1 value in the database which occurs 3 times. So if the database was 111333, then the frequency dictionary would look like 32 because for the frequency 3, there are 2 values which occur at that frequency. And those 2 values happen to be 1 and 3. Anyway, so these are the dictionaries. And then we have this output array, which is going to be the collection of zeros and ones that they want us to output. So every time one of the instructions is 3, then they want us to return a 0 or 1, and they want us to add that into an array, and they want us to return the resulting array as part of this function. Okay, so let's go ahead. So for each Q in the query, we're going to deal with this case by case. So we're going to deal with each instruction separately. So if Q0 equals 1, so basically what this means is that the instruction is to add something. So what we want to do is we want to add an occurrence of Q1 to the database. And so basically what we're doing is we're going through our DB dictionary, and for the value of Q1, we want to increase it by 1. And so what we do is, of course, we do dbdict.get Q1, 0. And what this means is that Q1 might not appear in the database yet. So if it doesn't appear, we want to make it appear and assign it the value of 0. But if it does appear, then we want to return that value and increase it by 1. Because we're increasing the occurrence of Q1 in the database by 1. So if Q1 didn't exist in the database, then we would define it and then increase it to 1. If it does exist in the database, then we just get the value and increase that value by 1. Okay, so notice I've left a blank here. So what we're going to do, in addition to, not only do we need to add this to the database, but we need to add this to the frequency dictionary. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to update this frequency dictionary. And just for the logic, it makes more sense to me to do this first. I guess you can change things and make it go second if you really wanted to, but I think this makes more sense. So we're going to start with if dbdict.get Q1 0 is equal to 0. Okay, and why are we doing this? In this case, this is the case if either Q1 does not exist in the database, or if it used to exist in the database but was removed so that it no longer exists. So in this case, Q1 does not appear in the database, so its frequency becomes 1. I hope that doesn't cause any issues. Should be fine. What if we try this? There, that's fine. Okay, so yeah, so in this case, we just want to, so if Q1 either never existed in the database, or it used to and got removed, its frequency is going to become 1. So what this means is that frequency dictionary 1 is going to increase by 1. So the way we do this is that we do the same thing that we did before. So basically we get the value corresponding with 1 in the database if it exists and increase it by 1. Otherwise, we define it to be in the dictionary and we set its value to 1. Okay, so what this means is that basically what this frequency dictionary is saying is that there is an additional value in the database who appears with frequency 1. And we know that it now appears with frequency 1 because it didn't appear and now it does. Otherwise, what we need to do is the current, so if this if statement is false, then Q1 does appear in the dictionary at some positive frequency. So it occurs at least once in the dictionary. So let's say that Q1 appears in the dictionary n times. Then by adding an additional instance of Q1 to the database, what happens is the frequency of Q1 changes from n to n1. So the n entry of frequency dictionary needs to be decreased by 1, and the n plus 1 entry of frequency dictionary needs to be increased by 1. So let's write out what this looks like. So the frequency dictionary dbdict.get Q1. Is this redundant? Because the only reason I was doing the .get was to set it equal to 0 if necessary. I think we can just do it like this. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to subtract 1. So remember, what are we... So what are we doing here? So this is the number of times that Q1 currently appears in the database. This is the number of this thing that I've highlighted is the number of times that Q1 currently appears in the database. So the number of values which appear at this particular frequency is going to decrease by 1 because Q1 no longer occurs at this frequency. And that's why we're doing this minus equals 1. On the other hand, frequency dictionary dbdict Q1 plus 1 is going to do we just do plus equal 1? No, we don't, because here, okay, so here, we know that this frequency occurs in the frequency dictionary. We know that this frequency occurs in frequency dictionary because Q1 occurs at this frequency. So that information is already stored in the frequency dictionary. However, there might not be yet any value in the database which occurs at this frequency plus 1, which is what Q1 is now going to occur at in terms of frequency. And so we need to do the thing where we get the value and increase it by 1. So we either define it and we basically do this thing in short. So it's going to be plus equal, let's see, so this is a little long. So frequency dictionary, and here we do use the get. So we're going to get database dictionary Q1. And this should be, hold on. I'm reading the code off of somewhere. So frequency dictionary dot get database dictionary. Oh, I had the database dictionary dot get again, so, and that was unnecessary. And this is going to be plus 1, comma 0, plus 1. Okay, there we go. All right. And so now what we're saying is like, okay, so now Q1 is going to now appear in the dictionary at frequency 1 more than what frequency it previously occurred at. And so we're going to increase it by 1. And so of course, like, you could put this if statement, this updating of the frequency dictionary, you could put this second, but you would have to like adjust some of these plus 1s. So I think this plus 1 here and this plus 1 you would get rid of, and then you might have to put a minus 1 here. You'd have to do something like that. But I'm pretty sure you could do it that way if you really wanted to. But me personally, I don't. And by the way, this, because I was using get functions here, this might not work when I run it, so we'll have to see what happens. Okay, so that's the case of the instruction being 1. Now we have to move on. So if Q1 if Q0 equals 2, then, okay. Hold on. Ooh, I might have been looking at the wrong lines here. Dictionary, U1 plus 1. No, this looks good. And of course, if there are any errors, we'll find out. Okay, so if Q0 equals 2, then of course the first thing that we want to do is we want to update the frequency dictionary. So if database dictionary dot get, for some reason I keep doing G instead of Q, I don't know why. So if this is greater than 0, then this means that that Q1 actually exists in the dictionary and exists at a positive frequency, and so we can actually remove it. If this is false, then there's nothing to do, because either it occurs at frequency 0 or it's not. Well, it occurs at frequency 0, and it may or may not be stored as a 0 value in the dictionary. So here we do sort of like a... Do we do the same? We do almost the same thing as before. So frequency dictionary this value is going to go down by 1, but the frequency that increases is the -1 frequency, because now there is the value Q1 now appears at a frequency 1 less than the frequency that it previously appeared at. So there we go. All right, so there's that. And then we remove an occurrence of Q1 from the database. And so we do if Q1 in database dictionary, then we remove it. If db dict Q1 is greater than 0, then we remove it. Now that I'm looking at this a little more, I wonder if I could have combined both of these steps together. Yeah, can't I just do this? The way that I wrote the code when I was writing it the first time is at first I didn't have the frequency dictionary in here. I only was using the database dictionary. And I did that naive thing that I talked about well, not naive, but that sort of like the first thing you might try, where it's like, okay, so let's just try to loop through all of the values that are stored in the database and see if any of them have the frequency that we're looking for. I did that just to make sure that the code ran well, and it did, and it actually worked for all but one of the test cases. So it almost was enough to solve the problem, but of course they did throw one in there that would time out if you didn't have this second dictionary. So yeah. And then I added in all the frequency dictionary stuff afterwards. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think I can combine this a little bit here. I'm not sure if I can do that all for the Q0 equals 1, but for Q equals 0, Q0 equals 2, it seems to work. So now I've changed two things in my solution, so there's a chance so there's an even greater chance that I messed something up. So we'll have to see what happens. So else, nope, we want this here. Because this is going to be the Q0 equals 3 case. Okay, so check if any entry in the database has frequency Q1. So we're going to start with the default output is going to be 0. And then of course we're going to skip if the database is empty, because I ran into they do throw some test cases at you where the first thing they do is they search the database. And if you just look for Q1 in the database, it'll give you an error because you're trying to look for something in an empty object. And Python doesn't like that. So and the way you can test if the dictionary is empty is if you this Boolean, this will basically convert the dictionary to a true or false, and the dictionary will be true if it's non-empty, and it will be false if it is empty. So saying if Boolean dictionary, this is saying if the dictionary is not empty, then if Q1 is in the frequency dictionary, then of course things in the frequency dictionary can have zero. Here's what I did before. If the frequency Q1 is greater than 0, output equals 1. And yes, I do think this is important actually, because you need to frequency dictionary, because the number of things of a given frequency can increase and decrease. You can have a case where there was where there used to be an integer, there used to be values which occurred with frequency 2, but they've all been deleted, and so the number 2 could appear in the frequency dictionary but have a corresponding value of 0, meaning that 0 values have frequency 2, which means that the output should be 0. So you want to make sure that there is at least one value who has this given frequency. And so in that case, we change the output to 1. And so now what we do is output array, we include output here. And then finally, our value that we're returning is going to be the output array. All right, so I changed some things about the solution, so let's run the code and see if it works. No, it doesn't. I don't like that. So my output was 0. Should have been 0, 1. All right, so I figured out the issue. And I'm going to talk through how I figured out the issue because I think this might be useful. I mean, if you don't care about the troubleshooting, then you can just skip to the end to see the final answer. But I think it's useful to see like how to troubleshoot code if it's not working and you're pretty sure you did everything right. And there's probably just some simple mistake that you made somewhere and you have no idea where it is. So basically, when I ran the code as it is, and it wasn't in any of the things that I did, so the dbdict.git that I was using before, I was correct in my assessment that it's not needed. So this is all fine. Same thing with this, the update that I made here, that's all fine. The way I figured this out was when I ran the code, my output, I got a whole bunch of zeros here instead of, so the expected output was 0, 1, and here I got a whole bunch of zeros. So the case of q equals 3 is happening a lot. So I was trying to figure out why that is the case. I mean, you could use print functions if you want. I guess they're not really necessary. But why would this case be happening a lot? And that's because of this thing. This should be else if. So if q0 is 1, we do the first instruction. If q0 equals 2, we do the second instruction. Otherwise, q0 equals 3, and we do the third instruction. The way I was doing it, so if q0 equals 1, then we did this. Separate if statement. If q0 equals 2, then we do this otherwise. And this otherwise was only relative to instead of q0 being equal to 2. So this else statement was running if q0 equals 3 or if q0 equals 1. But of course, we want this to be taken care of already. So I had if instead of else if here, or elif. And so that was causing the issue. And so changing this from if to elif, let's run the code and check if it works. And it works. And let's submit the code. And it ran actually pretty quickly. So yeah, this is, I think, a really good exercise, and it's, of course, the last exercise in this section. And so what we're really talking about here is dictionaries and how to work with dictionaries. And so, again, you want to use dictionaries to make it really quick to get information about something. And so you need to be able to really identify what do you want to be the key of a dictionary? What thing do you want to look up quickly? So here there's two things we want to look up quickly. We want to look up a particular value and figure out for each value how many times does it appear. But that's not the only thing. We also want to know for each frequency, does that frequency occur at all in our database? is there a value in our database that occurs at that frequency? And so the frequency is another thing that we want to look up information about, and so we want that to be a key of a separate dictionary. So yeah, the main thing for these dictionary exercises is being able to identify what information you need to look up, how you can store that information in a dictionary, and how you define the dictionary in an efficient manner so that you can look it up easily. Once the dictionaries are set up, looking for things in dictionaries is very straightforward in Python. So it's just about setting it up. Okay, and so, and this also hopefully gives you some insight on how you can go about debugging your code if there are any issues. But yeah, so that's how you solve this exercise, and that wraps up the dictionaries and hash maps section. And I still don't know what a hash map is, but I'm guessing it's similar to a dictionary.